we're going to now cover another terrible story. This one, thankfully, has for now a happy ending, or at least not a catastrophic ending. So here are the filmmakers behind the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land, about the struggle of Palestinians to defend their homes against Israeli settlers in the West Bank. So here they are accepting their award on the stage. Now, if you look over the speaker's right shoulder there, Hamdan Bilal, that is the filmmaker who was recently attacked by Israeli settlers at his home in the West Bank. And, you know, we can't play any Oscars footage for copyright reasons, but Yuval Abraham, who is the Israeli filmmaker behind that film, mentioned on stage at the Oscars that, you know, he gets to go back home and be safe, but his fellow filmmakers have to go back home and exist under siege. And so the tragic irony of that is that he was proven right very, very quickly. So Yuval Abraham, who is the Israeli co-director of this film, says a group of settlers just lynched Hamdan Bilal, co-director of our film No Other Land. They beat him, and he has injuries in his head and stomach, bleeding. Soldiers invaded the ambulance, he called, and took him. No sign of him since. He then clarified, note, Hamdan was assaulted and beaten up, not murdered. My use of lynched was a mistranslation from Hebrew. English isn't my first language. He's injured and being held at a police station in a settlement. They did not let his lawyer speak to him yet, so we don't know more. He has since been released. We'll get to that later in the segment, but just not to leave you in suspense, he has been released and is on his way home. But as we're going to learn in this piece, I wish I could say he's on his way towards, being safe at home. But of course, he's not safe at home because of what this story is. Oscar-winning Palestinian director is attacked by Israeli settlers and detained by the army. The AP writes, and there's a reason we're using the AP, because they get some exclusive quotes from his wife later on. Israeli settlers beat up one of the Palestinian co-directors of the Oscar-winning documentary film No Other Land on Monday in the occupied West Bank before he was detained by the Israeli military, according to two of his fellow directors and other witnesses. Basel Adra, another co-director, witnessed the detention and said around 24 settlers, some masked, some carrying guns, some in Israeli uniform, attacked the village. Soldiers who arrived pointed their guns at the Palestinians while settlers continued throwing stones. We came back from the Oscars, and every day since there is an attack on us, Adra told the Associated Press. This might be their revenge on us for making the movie. It feels like a punishment. The Israeli military said it detained 3 Palestinians suspected of hurling rocks at forces and 1 Israeli civilian involved in a violent confrontation, quote unquote, between Israelis and Palestinians, a claim witnesses interviewed by the AP disputed. The military said it had transferred them to Israeli police for questioning and had evacuated an Israeli citizen from the area to receive medical treatment. So here is some video from the confrontation. This has received millions of views, and it seems corroborated by Yuval's video himself. It's unclear to me who took this video and what it is of exactly. Of course, there was a large-scale confrontation, but here is some video from the event.
No! Can we go back to the car? Guys, back to the car! Back to the car! Back to the car!
Get in the car, get in the car.
Oi.
Get in, go.
Oh my god.
Oh, good thing this window's working.
Our window was broken.
Whose car? I can't go. This is a military.
Okay, so again, it's not clear to me exactly who those people are. It's not Hamdan himself because he was transported in an ambulance, and that's obviously just a civilian vehicle. But this is some video time-stamped with yesterday's date and time from Yuval himself. The group of armed KKK-like masked settlers that lynched no other land director Hamdan Bilal, still missing at that time, caught here on camera. So here they are. This looks to be the same. Yeah, same deal. So here they come in masks. See, so no one can identify. These are the settlers, by the way, that Trump lifted the sanctions on. He thought Biden was too mean to these people. Just absolute thuggery and gangsterism there. On camera with the timestamp in the bottom left corner, as you can see, March 24th, 2025, 1829, so 5:29 p.m. Local time. Okay, now, thankfully, the day after, he was released. Israel releases Oscar-winning Palestinian director after he was attacked by West Bank settlers. Israeli authorities released an Oscar-winning Palestinian director who was detained by the army after being attacked by Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank. He said they beat him in front of his home while filming the assault. On Tuesday, with bruises on his face and blood on his clothes, he was released from an Israeli police station in the West Bank settlement of Kiryat Arba. He and two other Palestinians who had been attacked and detained were driven to a nearby hospital. Bilal said he was held at an army base and forced to sleep under a freezing air conditioner. I was blindfolded for 24 hours, he told the Associated Press. All the night I was freezing. It was a room I couldn't see anything. I heard the voice of soldiers laughing about me. Palestinian residents say around 24 settlers, some masked, some carrying guns, and some in military uniforms, attacked the West Bank village of Susaya on Monday evening as residents were breaking their fast during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Yeah, so a lot of these sickos will dress in military uniform to make sure that the Palestinians they're terrorizing don't fight back. Because they will, so that's a tactic that a lot of them use. Some of them just dress like, we just saw, just masked thugs. Soldiers who arrived pointed their guns at the Palestinians, while settlers continued throwing stones, they said. The Israeli military said Monday it had detained 3 Palestinians suspected of hurling rocks at forces and 1 Israeli civilian involved in what it described as a violent confrontation. On Tuesday, it referred further queries to police, who did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Lamia Bilal, the director's wife, said she heard her husband being beaten outside their home as she huddled inside with their 3 children. She heard him screaming, "I'm dying," and calling for an ambulance. When she looked out the window, she saw 3 men in uniform beating Bilal with the butts of their rifles and another person in civilian clothes who appeared to be filming the violence. Of course, after the Oscar, they have come to attack us more, Lamia said. I felt afraid, of course. On Tuesday, a small bloodstain could be seen outside their home, and the car's windshield and windows were shattered. Neighbors pointed to a nearby water tank with a hole in the side that they said had been punched by the settlers. Bilal said he was attacked by a well-known settler who had threatened him in the past. The settler can be seen with other masked men in a widely circulated video from August, meaning August of last year, in which they threaten Bilal. This is my land. I was given it by God, the settler says in the video, in which he also uses profanity and tries to get Bilal to fight him. Next time it won't be nice, the settler says. Thankfully, of course, Hamdan Bilal is free and is about to go home to his family. Is he free, though? No. He's alive, thank God, and thank God he gets to go home to his family, but that's his home. That's his home. That's how this guy has to live, where pieces of garbage can come to his house freely, terrorize him and his family, and beat him. And this piece of shit president of ours thinks Joe Biden was being too mean to those people. He lifted the sanctions on those West Bank settlers. So that's that story for you.
And this is where, when you have these intellectual dark web douchebags going up there and talking about the Muslims as being driven by religious fanaticism while defending Israel. The whole premise of Israel is built around religious fanaticism. It's built around biblical prophecy. It's built around a literal interpretation of a combination of what I would consider myths, folk tales, some elements of history. The whole country is based on that. The whole idea that they have a legitimate claim to that land is a religious claim. It's a biblical claim. And you hear it right here. God gave me this land.
Yep.
And if there's anything we know from history, some of the greatest atrocities that to be considered were committed by people who believed that their atrocities were sanctioned by God. This is part of what allows them to behave this way. Because if you read the Bible, which I have, yeah, man, it's God tells them to go commit a genocide. That's in there. So if you take that as literal, this is what God wants of us. He said, he said, look, the way that I read it, they wanted to take the land. And, the Bible is a mix of historical facts and mythological justification.
Right.
So God gave us this land. There's just one little problem. There's people on it. So God tells them, go commit a 7-nation genocide. That's in there. So if you are taking that as the literal word of God that you're guiding yourself by, of course, this is an extension of the Bible. Now, when they're talking about Islam, they have no problem critiquing Islam and blaming Islam for ideas in the
Right.
Muslim world that they feel they don't like, and they feel this is what's driving behavior that they don't like, but they never put that on Jews or Christians for that matter. There's a lot of crazy shit in all of those books, in my opinion. And you can see right here what it allows people to justify.
Yep. Yes, indeed, 100%. And so obviously, I breathed a very, very heavy sigh of relief when I found out that he was released and that he's on his way home. So obviously, a better ending than what could have been, thank God. But the horror continues. Like, they're not safe at home, obviously. They've been terrorized, as the piece says, every day since they got back from Los Angeles.
Right.
Have been retaliatory attacks against them since they won the Oscar. And so I hope to God that they stay safe. Like, what can you even do? Can you hire security? Like, can you get security? Like, it's an occupation. What steps are you allowed to take to defend yourself from these people?
I mean, I understand your home is your home, and especially they probably feel like they want to fight for justice. Man, I got one foot out the door with this freaking country. Man.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I can't imagine choosing to go back there, but God bless them, man. Fighting a good fight.
Well, this country is just rotting on its own, according to its own premises, in my opinion, largely because of the flaws within its own premises. That is an occupation. That is, in their minds, their home that's being taken over by people who have no right to be there. So they are, I think, rightly, understandably, more defensive and more proud of their country than we should be of ours. Because, their land is being taken over by an outside force, whereas we are just apparently...
But the Israeli guy, too. I mean, him, too. Like, why you even want to go back there?
The Israeli guy, it's a different question. This Yuval Abraham, we appreciated making the film. He seems like one of the very, very few Israelis with a heart and a soul and a conscience. And I'm sure the people who published that video have similar intentions. But you have to ask the same question of them. Like, at what point do you wash your hands of this? Right. All right. And by wash your hands of it, I mean just not be a part of it anymore. Still continue your activism, but what are you still doing there, man? I mean, it must be hell to live there. I can't imagine being one of, like we said, the very few Israelis of conscience and just being surrounded by that kind of a society.
Well, what do you? Yeah, I mean, it would be like living inside of the X platform.
Yeah, right. So having like your neighbors are Clown
it
World
would
and Ian
be like
Miles Strong.
Tron. It would be like Tron,
Yeah.
only you get transported
Yeah.
inside of X.
Cat Turd is the mailman. Yeah.
No, unless you're going to advocate, I don't know what he advocates, but unless you're advocating to dismantle Israel as an apartheid state and allow Palestinians the right to return, in which case you're going to have a very rough time living over there.
Right.
They're going to call you a capo.
Right.
Please clap.